Hey fellow soldiers, I am so happy that you're here today. Let's sharpen our swords as we dive deep in the scriptures. My name is Jennifer Wilson Presley, and we are going to be looking at 4 books in the New Testament today. That's right, 4 books. Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and Philemon. Now, if you're connected with me on Facebook, I just kind of let you pick a chapter or 2 to read out of one of those 4 books. And why are these 4 books so special? I'm going to get to that in just a minute. But before I get to that, I want to tell you about Paul. Paul is actually the author of these 4 books, and he is going through a waiting period in his life. You know, we all go through waiting periods in our lives, right? We just kind of want to fast forward the waiting period so we can get to the end and see how it's going to turn out for us. And we kind of can look at these waiting periods as wasted periods, right? We can kind of look at them as just times in our lives that, don't really mean that much, and so they can be kind of fruitless. But during this time, Paul is going through a time in which he is going through a tremendous waiting period in his life. And he brings about some of the most fruitful writings during this waiting period in his life. What is he going through? Well, Paul in his life during this time, he was in prison. In fact, he was on house arrest. He was waiting for to hear back from the Emperor of Rome to see about his case, how it was going to end up for him. Well, you may be asking, well, Jennifer, why is he in prison? He wasn't in prison because he did something wrong. He was in prison because he was propagating the gospel. He was spreading the gospel of Christ. And he had committed no crime. He was in there. He was just an innocent person in there. And, and he is awaiting the fate, what's going to happen to him. And during these 2 years, he is in a tremendous waiting period. He doesn't know how it's going to end up for him. He doesn't know what the end factor is going to be. And, Paul he really is just so fruitful during this time in his life. If anybody had anything to complain about, it would be Paul, because he was in prison because he didn't even deserve to be there. He didn't do anything wrong. And he didn't think about that. He didn't let that control him. When prisoners are in prison, they have a lot of time to think. Prisoners don't have all the distractions like we have when we're enjoying freedom, right? We can pretty much do anything we want anytime we want, as long as we don't have commitments we have to follow through with, or appointments we have to go to, or anything like that. But we can watch TV pretty much anytime we want. We can go out to eat, restaurants, we can go to and from. But as prisoners, they are confined, and they are on a schedule, and everything is dictated to them, except for what they think about. That is the only thing that they have the freedom to do, to think about whatever they want, whenever they want. So how do you know what a prisoner's thinking about? It's very simple. What comes out in their communication? Paul, during this waiting period, we see exactly what he's been thinking about. It comes out through his communication. He wrote those 4 books that I just mentioned: Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, Philemon, to those churches. He was writing to churches to people. And what was in these letters? They are so full of deep, meaningful, spiritual truths that we look at 2,000 years later. So when you look at these letters like this, they are very personal, because they even though he had written them to specific churches, he wrote Ephesians to the church of Ephesus. He wrote Philippians to the church of Philippi. He wrote Colossians to the church of Colossae. And he wrote Philemon to Philemon. Now that was the only letter, it was a personal letter that he wrote to Philemon, and Philemon was actually a congregant of the church of Colossae. And so these letters were written specifically to these churches, but they are truths that we as Christians come to, and they can be our personal truths in how we live our life. So for you to read those letters in that manner, to really see what was going on in his mind, the only thing he had complete control over, what is going on in his mind, what's coming out in these letters, that's what's going on in his mind. And when you look at it like this, you really can see how strong of a Christian Paul was. You know, the next 4 devotionals, I'm going to be dissecting each individual letter, and I'm going to be showing to you what is so important in these letters that other people may not see, that other people may miss. And I want you to read these letters in a deeper way, in a deeper lens, and look at them in that way. That is my spiritual food for you to munch on the rest of the week. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. I can't wait to see you next week.